Eternia basked in the golden glow of peace. The twin suns bathed the land in warmth as villagers went about their daily routines. The rolling plains, shimmering lakes, and lush forests all sang of prosperity. Castle Grayskull stood sentinel on the horizon, a silent protector holding secrets of unimaginable power. Prince Adam of Eternia, known to his people as He-Man, had just returned from a skirmish with Skeletor's forces. For once, it seemed the villain's schemes were quiet, allowing He-Man a rare moment of rest. "Another day, another plot thwarted," Adam said with a smile as he entered the royal palace. Teela greeted him, her arms crossed. "Don't let your guard down. Adam, Skeletor's silence is often more dangerous than his noise," she warned. But as Teela finished her sentence, a thunderstorm echoed across the skies. The air shimmered as a crimson rift tore through the heavens, spilling waves of chaotic energy that rippled across the land. Birds scattered, animals howled, and the ground quaked. "What in the name of Grayskull is that?" Teela gasped. Adam's expression hardened. Something unnatural. The rift pulsed with power, and from it emerged a figure unlike any Eternia had seen before. Towering and clad in crimson armor, the being stepped forward, his every movement shaking the earth. Villagers screamed and fled as the monstrous figure surveyed his surroundings. "I am the Juggernaut," he roared, his voice a booming declaration. "I am the avatar of Sitarak, and no force in this world or any other can stand in my way." With a single stomp, Juggernaut crushed a nearby car to splinters. The shockwave sent villagers sprawling. His laughter echoed as he moved toward the distant silhouette of Castle Grayskull. "The power here. It calls to me," Juggernaut muttered, his eyes locked on the fortress. "Sitarak will claim it, and none shall stop me." At the royal palace, Man-at-Arms rushed into the throne room, his face grim. "Adam, something massive is heading toward Castle Grayskull. Reports say it's tearing through everything in its path." Adam didn't hesitate. Grabbing his sword, he raised it high. "By the power of Grayskull!" he shouted. Lightning crackled, enveloping him in a radiant glow as his form transformed into He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. "I'll deal with this intruder," He-Man said, his voice resolute. "Teela, Man-at-Arms, organize the defenses and protect the villagers." With Battlecat by his side, He-Man charged toward the threat. He-Man found Juggernaut in the middle of a forest, surrounded by destruction. Trees lay uprooted, and the earth was scarred with deep craters. The massive figure stood amidst the devastation, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Who are you, and what do you want with Eternia?" He-Man demanded, stepping forward. Juggernaut turned, his gaze narrowing as he studied the golden-haired warrior. "So this world has a champion. Good. It will make Sitarak's victory all the sweeter when I crush you underfoot." He-Man's grip tightened on the Sword of Power. "You'll find Eternia isn't so easily conquered." Juggernaut smirked. "We'll see about that." Without warning, Juggernaut charged. The ground trembled as his massive form hurtled forward like a living avalanche. He-Man braced himself, raising his sword. When the two collided, the impact sent shockwaves rippling through the forest, uprooting trees and sending debris flying. He-Man pushed back with all his might, his boots digging into the ground. For a moment, it seemed as though he might hold Juggernaut in place. But the unstoppable force proved too great. He-Man was sent hurtling through the air, crashing into a rocky outcrop. "Is that all you've got?" Juggernaut taunted, pounding his chest. He-Man rose, undeterred. "I've faced beings far stronger than you. You're not invincible." With a roar, He-Man charged back into the fray, his sword flashing in the sunlight. The two titans clashed again, trading blows that shook the earth. He-Man's strength was legendary, but Juggernaut's momentum seemed unrelenting. Realizing brute force wouldn't be enough, He-Man shifted tactics. Using his agility, he began luring Juggernaut deeper into the forest, away from the nearby villages. Juggernaut pursued, his rage growing with every missed strike. "You can't run forever," Juggernaut bellowed, smashing through trees like they were twigs. "I'm not running," He-Man said under his breath. just buying time. As they reached a narrow canyon, He-Man leaped to higher ground, using his sword to dislodge massive boulders. The rocks cascaded down, temporarily burying Juggernaut beneath tons of rubble. For a moment, silence reigned. Then the boulders shifted and Juggernaut emerged, unscathed. "Nice try," he sneered, shaking the dust from his armor. He-Man gritted his teeth. This would be harder than he thought. Juggernaut's triumphant roar echoed through the canyon as he brushed off the last of the rubble. His crimson armor glinted under the sun, and his sheer presence radiated a terrifying aura. "I told you," Juggernaut bellowed. "Nothing stops me. Not a canyon, not an avalanche, not even you." He-Man stood atop the rocky ridge, his breathing steady despite the intense clash. If brute strength is your only weapon, then you've already lost. The warrior of Eternia leaped from the ridge, landing gracefully on Battlecat, who growled in readiness. Together, they darted out of the canyon, their speed unmatched in the open terrain. He-Man's plan was clear: lead Juggernaut away from populated areas and toward the wastelands, where his rampage would cause no harm to innocent lives. Behind him, Juggernaut gave chase, his massive form smashing through the narrow canyon walls as if they were paper. The ground quaked with every step, sending rocks tumbling and fissures spreading. "You can't run forever," Juggernaut roared, his booming voice carrying across the landscape. He-Man glanced over his shoulder, his grip firm on the sword of power. "I don't need forever, just long enough." As He-Man led Juggernaut through Eternia's desolate plains, his mind raced. This wasn't an ordinary foe. Juggernaut's power wasn't natural. It was something far greater, something cosmic. He needed answers. "I need you to buy me some time, old friend," He-Man said to Battlecat as they approached a hidden glade. Battlecat growled in understanding, then turned sharply, sprinting away to lead Juggernaut in a wide arc. Meanwhile, He-Man slipped into the shadows of the forest. Deep within the glade, a shimmering portal opened. The sorceress appeared in her spectral form, her expression grave. "He-Man," she said, her voice echoing, "you face a power unlike any Eternia has ever known." "Who is he? And what drives him?" He-Man asked. The sorceress waved her hand, conjuring an image of Juggernaut standing before a massive fiery altar. A glowing red gem pulsed with energy as the figure was transformed into the unstoppable force He-Man now faced. He is Cain Marco, a mortal from another realm who was granted power by Cyttorak, a being of immense chaos. "That gem," she pointed to the image of the crimson gem of Cyttorak, embedded in Juggernaut's helmet, is the source of his invincibility. It channels Cyttorak's destructive will into him, making him an avatar of unstoppable force. "So the gem is the key," He-Man said, his jaw tightening. "Yes," the sorceress confirmed. "But beware, the gem's power is tied to his very being. Severing it could destroy him, or worse." "I don't want to destroy him," He-Man replied firmly. "I just want to protect Eternia." The sorceress nodded. "Then you must use the sword of power wisely. It alone can disrupt the magic binding him to Cyttorak." With her warning still echoing in his mind, He-Man stepped out of the glade just as the ground began to shake again. Juggernaut was closing in. The wastelands stretched for miles, endless. Dunes and jagged rocks under a fiery orange sky. It was the perfect place for a final confrontation. He-Man stood atop a rocky outcrop, waiting as Juggernaut barreled toward him. "There's nowhere left to run!" Juggernaut shouted, his voice like rolling thunder. "I wasn't running," He-Man said calmly, raising his sword. "I was leading you here." Juggernaut smirked. "Fine by me. You've just made it easier for me to crush you." With a deafening roar, Juggernaut charged. The ground quaked, and dust clouds rose in his wake. He-Man braced himself, gripping the sword of power tightly. At the last moment, he sidestepped, using his sword to deliver a precision strike to Juggernaut's side. The blade sparked against the armor, sending Juggernaut skidding to a halt. "You think that tickles?" Juggernaut taunted, turning to face He-Man. "No," He-Man replied, his voice steady. "But I don't need to hurt you, I just need to stop you." Juggernaut laughed. "You can't stop me. I'm unstoppable." Their battle raged on, the wastelands bearing the brunt of their clash. Each blow from Juggernaut sent shockwaves through the earth, while He-Man used his agility and skill to avoid direct hits. He struck only when necessary, each attack aimed at Juggernaut's helmet. Finally, He-Man saw his opening. As Juggernaut lunged forward, He-Man leaped high into the air, bringing his sword down with all his might. The blade struck the Crimson Gem, sending a ripple of energy through the battlefield. Juggernaut staggered, clutching his helmet. For the first time, his movements slowed. What are you doing?" He growled, his voice tinged with panic. He-Man didn't respond. Instead, he focused all his energy into the Sword of Power, its blade glowing brighter than ever before. With a final mighty swing, he shattered the Crimson Gem. Juggernaut let out a thunderous roar as the gem's power left him. His massive form began to shrink, his armor cracking and falling away. When the light faded, Cain Marcos stood before He-Man, a shadow of his former self. Cain collapsed to his knees, staring at his trembling hands. What have you done?" "I freed you," He-Man said, his tone softening. Cain looked up at him, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and despair. "You don't understand. Without Sitarak's power, I'm nothing." "You're wrong," He-Man said. "You've been given a second chance. Don't waste it." Before Cain could respond, the Crimson Rift reopened behind him. A voice, deep and menacing, echoed across the wastelands. "Cain Marco, you have failed me." Cain's expression hardened. No, give me another chance." The rift's energy engulfed him, and in an instant, he was gone. The rift closed, leaving He-Man alone in the silence of the wastelands.